I think most people by now will have signed in, so let's get started. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to their elders past, present and emerging. Good morning, everyone. I'm Suzie McInerney and I'm the CEO here at 6 Degrees Executive. I'd like to extend a really warm welcome to all of you and thank you very much for taking the time this morning to be with us for what is a very important conversation about mental health with our special guest, Georgie Harman, who I will introduce shortly. Joining us today are clients of 6 Degrees from what is a very diverse range of industries in which we recruit, and also clients from across Australia, mainly Eastern Seaboard. So welcome to all of you. Also joining us, I'm sure, are some of our candidates. Thank you for coming. And I must also welcome our 6 Degrees team from our offices in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and very publicly say a thank you, and I'm very proud of all of you for how you've managed yourselves through the last 18 months, which has obviously been really challenging. We have had over 260 registrations for this morning's event, which is by far and away the greatest number for a single virtual event that we have held, and we've held a few in the last 18 months, it's no surprise. And I take that as confirmation that the implications and effects on our mental health of what we've all endured over the past couple of years is very much still front of mind for many. For all of you on the call, for business leaders, for candidates, it is really quite a widespread area of concern, and therefore we're very, very lucky to be having this conversation this morning with Georgie Harman. And although most of us this week from across the country are embracing the easing of many restrictions and hopefully lockdowns and high case numbers are behind us, we do face new challenges as we look to open back up, to send our kids back to school, to start to think about re-entering our offices and welcoming people back into that space. And I know for many, the overwhelm of that scenario is also really quite ever-present. To explore the complex impact of the pandemic on our mental health, we're very grateful to be able to lean on the insights and unique experience of our special guest, Georgie Harman, who is, of course, the CEO of Beyond Blue. Welcome to you, Georgie.
Thanks, Suzie. It's so lovely to see you again. It feels like a long time, doesn't it? Time has a different dimension now.
It absolutely does. And yes, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Georgie and I did sit down 18 months ago and have a similar conversation in a different time. And yes, there's been lots and lots of water under the bridge. By way of introduction for all of you, Georgie's held the role of CEO at Beyond Blue since 2014. And in that time, she and her team have led a significant expansion of effort and results in service innovation in the mental health space, in suicide prevention and in digital solutions for mental health. Georgie's leadership and experience extends across the community, public and private sectors, and she was previously the Deputy CEO of the National Mental Health Commission, which she helped set up to provide independent advice to government on reform. Georgie, we're going to do a little bit of a poll in a minute, but I want to ask you a question, which is a simple question, and it's one we're going to ask everyone else in the group. But 18 months on, and with no doubt a continuation of a very, very busy role, how are you?
Oh, Suzie, I'm actually really good today. I think I'm going to score quite highly on the poll, but 7 days ago, completely different story. And I think that's been our experience, right? And everybody's experienced it differently at different times. And it's been an absolute roller coaster. But, I had my hair done on Friday. I sat in a restaurant with another person on Sunday. And life just feels better.
Excellent. Well, I think I did mention to you when I looked at myself on the screen, it's been a while since I've worn red lipstick, and I was like, who is this person? But here we are, the sign of getting back to some sense of normality. Well, I did mention that there's a lot of us on the call, which is fantastic, but we are going to ask people to participate a few times throughout. We will give everyone the opportunity to ask questions, and we really hope that people do so. You can just give a thumbs up to another person's question that will push it to the top of the queue, and we will get to those as best we can throughout the conversation. And we will also endeavour to respond to any questions we can't get to through the session. And I mentioned a poll, and something, Georgie, that we do here at 6 Degrees, it's become somewhat of a, kind of an institution in our business, is before we get into meetings, we'll quite often get a sense of the vibe and energy in the room by asking a simple question of where are you playing from? So a poll will pop up, and without overthinking it, we'd love everyone to nominate on a scale of 1 to 10 where you're playing from or how you're feeling. 1 being could barely get out of bed, and if you're a 1, then I don't know how you've managed to get yourself onto this call, all the way through to 10, which is obviously just couldn't be better. So please go ahead and do that, and we'll wait for those results to come through and then discuss the results. But yeah, Georgie, whilst we're doing that, it does feel like so much has happened since we last we sat together. Would you say the last 18 months has been the most challenging or the most rewarding time for you at Beyond Blue, or perhaps in your career?
Well, if I talk about, I think, can I take a bet both ways and say it's been both?
Yeah.
It really has. I mean, for me personally, it's been incredibly challenging. It's been a time when I've quite often not known, what the answer is, and being in that space of not being able to fix the unfixable is a very uncomfortable space for me. Obviously, we've experienced incredible demand for our services. In fact, August this year was one of our busiest months since the pandemic hit our shores. I've worried about my team. I've really worried about them as they've kind of worked harder than ever and also had to live through this situation. Most of us are based in Melbourne. But actually on the other side, I have learned so much about myself, about being a leader, being a different leader. And it has been an absolute honour to be in a role where you wake up every day and you know that you are hopefully making lives better. And that has been a great source of comfort and motivation to me. And as I said, I've completely changed some aspects of my leadership. I have realised that I do not need to see my people for them to be productive. They have been more productive than ever in the most challenging of circumstances. I thought I was one of those leaders that was actually quite modern in their thinking around flexibility. I was absolutely wrong. And now, we are navigating this space that so many organisations and businesses are around how do we hang on to that flexibility, because it works for us as a business and it works for the staff as well. So I think there are some really interesting challenges for us as leaders going forward. PwC and McKinsey have just published some really interesting articles about the great attrition and the great resignation. And I think those businesses, and I'm sure you're seeing it in your business, those businesses who actually don't hang on to the past and actually reimagine their future and build a different type of culture, I think are the ones that are going to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, definitely can relate to many of the themes that you've described, and this being a period of growth for us as individuals and as families and as friends, but certainly as leaders, to reflect on the growth that has been possible because of the ridiculous, environment that we've been operating in is somewhat of a gift, I guess, that we can reflect back to think about, in a sense, how far we've come, but certainly can relate to that concept of being constantly worried about, our people and how they are coping, but also extremely grateful for the opportunity to innovate and to, I guess, in a sense, to try new things and to accelerate much of what, hopefully we were on the trajectory to achieving as far as flexibility and a better balance for people in life, really, rather than work-life balance. Interestingly, the poll results are in, and there are a couple of outliers. I'm very happy that there was at least one person who was a 10. Enjoy the sunshine today and make the most of that positive energy. But it's probably no surprise, I guess, that there are people at either end of the spectrum, and really, I think a good thing that the majority of people coming in, around 7, 8 and 9. And I wonder how much of that is to do with the fact that there is this great sense of hope and optimism across the country today, given for many of us in Victoria in particular, we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel around, restrictions being lifted and some sense of normal for Christmas.
I reckon if you'd done that poll, 7 days ago, 10 days ago, 40, it would have been probably really different. But again, it's a real change in our lives. And whilst I think there is a great sense of optimism, and that is a fantastic thing, there's also a growing sense of unease, and a sense of, what does this all mean? There is still a lot of uncertainty. And, we're re-emerging into a community into lives where there's a lot of COVID still circulating in the community. And that's actually very different, certainly here in Victoria, to when we emerged last year. So I think we're seeing a lot more health anxiety. We're seeing a lot more sort of stress around, that re-entry. And it's a real thing. It's re-entry syndrome. It's actually a documented psychological phenomenon. So I'm really interested to talk more about that.
Absolutely. We will get to that, and we know that that's very palpable for a lot of people, myself included. We talked a bit about that, the kind of anxiety of having this thrust of social commitments when you haven't had them is one thing, but also I think really important for us to have perspective around, the financial and social and, health scars, for example, that many people will carry long after restrictions are lifted. And we talk about this sense of freedom, but in fact, the perspective that a lot of people will still continue to do it tough for a long time. And Georgie, we know obviously on an intellectual level that how important it is for us to look after our mental health. And I think thankfully over the years through the good work of Beyond Blue, but also, we've come to understand the importance of things like diet, sleep and exercise. It's not always easy to put that into practice, even though we know that's what works. And funnily, when times are really challenging, it is quite hard to sustain. What advice can you give us for really sticking to the strategies that can help keep us mentally well?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that, I've been talking endlessly about these things. What are the things that protect our mental health, especially when we're living through great periods of disruption and uncertainty? And they are, getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, moving your body, all of those kinds of things, staying connected. But it can be really difficult to sustain the things that help keep us well, even if we know they're good for us. And even the CEO of Beyond Blue struggles a lot at this and has to switch it up. This is the one thing I found personally, that the things that worked for me last year don't work for me anymore. And I think a lot of people have found that too. So there has been a lot of pressure, I think, at a societal level, particularly during lockdowns, to use this period as time to reflect and time to grow and time to be super productive and time to kind of take up a new hobby and all of these kinds of things. But I think that has actually unintentionally put a lot of pressure on some people. I think productivity and success actually have looked different during COVID and will probably look different after COVID or as we live with COVID. But you don't need to write a novel. You don't need to emerge with a six-pack. And I think if you start from a position of self-compassion, which is often an uncomfortable space for us, because self-compassion and self-care actually means putting yourself before others. And again, sometimes we're not very good at that. Feels selfish. But give yourself a break if you're not smashing it, if you're not doing all of the things that are the right things to do. So if you normally work out 3 times a week and you're not, just set yourself a goal of maybe on day 4, I'm just going to go for a gentle stroll. I'm going to walk around the block, twice instead of once. We need to set smaller and I think really realistic goals. Focus on what we are doing well, and give ourselves a high five for those small successes. And I think really take one thing at a time. Don't try and do it all at once, especially as we re-enter. And because once you've reintroduced one coping strategy, you actually feel better, and then you're more equipped to actually reintroduce a second and then maybe a third. So for me, it's about, basically self-compassion and being kind to yourself and being gentle on yourself and not feeling like you've got to compete.
great advice. I think everything's been amplified in lockdown. And I know for me, having a really great week where I feel really disciplined and I've done all the right things, you do feel fantastic. But being kind to yourself when, you know, you drop the ball because there's other things going on has been something that we've had to really consistently work on and almost reset week to week.
Yeah.
Sure. And although awareness and understanding of mental health has again improved over time, I'm sure it's still the case. We know that people living with mental health issues are still often stigmatised. What are some of the misconceptions that you think people hold towards those battling mental health issues?
Well, I think the one that we see is the most stubborn is this notion that if you live with a mental health issue, you're somehow weak or flaky or unreliable or not able to perform the duties of the role that you've actually been performing really well in for the last, 3 or 4 years. And this is an unfortunate myth. It's absolute nonsense. It's nonsense for 2 reasons. Firstly, these people are us. And I think everybody in Australia has come to realise in the last 18 months, 2 years, that in the right circumstances, the right combination of circumstances, we actually can all struggle. So record numbers of people reaching out to Beyond Blue, for example, for the first time in their lives. So these people are us. They're me. I've experienced depression. I'm the CEO of Beyond Blue. I run a business. I think I'm okay at it. I'm a pretty functioning leader. And conversations like the one we're having today actually really they do change that perception. Secondly, and I think this is the more important point, some of the strongest people that I have met, especially, in my career since I've been working in this field, are those who have lived through the greatest adversity. They live with severe, enduring, complex mental illness. It's cyclical, but it's something that they have to constantly manage. If you have been someone who has lived through thoughts of suicide, maybe even attempted suicide, but have found the strength to find your way back to life. I mean, what extraordinary resilience, what extraordinary adaptability, what extraordinary problem-solving skills, and what extraordinary empathy these people have built up for life, for others, and the realization that actually work and good work and work that actually helps us to thrive and contribute and feel like we're making a difference, no matter what that role is incredibly good for our mental health. It prevents suicide. It's all of those things. So this notion that people who live with mental illness is an absolute, weak, flaky, unproductive, absolute rubbish. And I think we need to hold on to that as we learn to, come back from this thing.
Interesting to think about the traits that you described. Often they're traits that can really build great strength to teams, things like resilience. So it's interesting to think about really what people who have battled or are battling mental health issues can actually, the value that they might add to a business and a team, rather than thinking about it as you said, as a weakness or a drain on that dynamic.
And I actually think, there's those traits are actually really good leadership traits. They're really good people management traits. When you can understand the experience of others, not that it's, everyone's experience is unique, but if you can actually understand and appreciate how struggle can actually lead to strength, but in those moments of struggle, support your people. I think that's what's again going to help organizations, I think, thrive and differentiate themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And empathetic leadership, certainly, really these days, very much a key ingredient to what effective modern leadership looks like. So I think that makes great sense. We're starting now to hear about long COVID, the long-term, health impacts from having contracted the virus. And I guess with so many people, as you said, in record numbers, experiencing mental health pressures or concerns for the first time, what do you think will be some of the long-term effects on the mental health of Australians as a result of this pandemic?
Oh, look, we know that the people have called it the shadow pandemic. I mean, I prefer it to describe it as, you know, this is going to have a really long tail. And that's why mental health and mental health responses actually need to be at the forefront of any social and economic recovery for our country, whether that's at a macro level, you know, in terms of government policy, or indeed at a workplace level. We know, so there was some new research published a couple of weeks ago in the Lancet, and I just need to get these numbers right, so I'm just going to look at my other screen. So globally, the Lancet has published figures that show that the pandemic has brought an extra 53 million cases of major depression and more than 76 million cases of clinical anxiety. Big numbers, right?
Yeah.
We know that, so it's going to have a long tail, and it's going to, you know, have a profound impact. We know that some groups are going to continue to do it much tougher than others. So, you know, the things that we've experienced in providing our services is, you know, if you're unemployed or in insecure work, if you're young, if you're a woman, especially, you know, sort of middle-aged, if you're from a multicultural background, if you're a small business owner, if you're an LGBTIQ plus community member, these are the groups that we are, you know, particularly worried about, and who will probably feel this thing harder because they already started often from a place of disadvantage and adversity and greater challenge. So I think, again, mental health has to be at the forefront of the response. And if we all remember those people, and we actually, you know, at an individual level, at a workplace level, and at a societal and policy level, do everything we can to lift them up, everybody does better. So returning to that kind of self-centeredness, the individualistic responses and ways of transacting in business, at work, you know, I think really we need to have a good hard look at ourselves on those things. But I think, you know, the experiences change us not just as a community, but actually on an individual level. And we really can't underestimate the toll that this has taken. You know, that we've all been living in a constant state of change and uncertainty, and that's very uncomfortable for us. And it actually takes a toll, and it changes our brain chemistry. So excessive worrying can actually change our brains. Repeated stress actually shrinks our brains, and it affects our cognitive ability to process information, to concentrate, to make good decisions, and to interfere with learning and memory and things like that. So, and that manifests itself in sleep disturbance, irritability, brain fog, this thing called brain COVID. It's a thing. And it also heightens our fight or flight response, which is, you know, a really underlying symptom of anxiety. It suppresses our rational thoughts. So if you're like me, not able to read a book anymore, I cannot pick up a book and concentrate. I get 2 pages in, I'm like, oh, that's too hard. That's actually okay. Like, it's actually perfectly normal. So again, we've got to, you know, be kind to ourselves, but also just retrain ourselves and talk to one another about the experiences, because I can guarantee it, they are very common experiences. And you feel less alone if you actually share how you're feeling. And it's surprising. I think it's surprising when you do talk about this stuff, how common the experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think finding the language to articulate how you're feeling sometimes is tough. I know that there's an article that has definitely done the rounds a couple of months ago, all around this notion of languishing, which was a new word and a new concept. But I tell you, when I first read that article, I had this moment where I thought, wow, I honestly feel like they've written this about me. This is exactly the words that I've been trying to find to really articulate this kind of feeling of blah. The best I had until then. We shared that amongst the group here, and I'm sure many people on this call have read that or associated content. And gosh, that same moment for a lot of people was similar. And there was a sense of relief, but there was also, as you said, this sense that You know what? I feel like that too. And opening up that conversation almost brings this sense of it's okay. This is not me. This is us. And it is largely because of the fact that we're experiencing this together, experiencing it very differently. But certainly that concept of feeling connected to people because you are feeling the same and able to talk about it was, a huge relief at a time that I think we all needed it.
And look, most of us will be okay.
Yes,
Through periods of, all the research shows of massive global, things and natural disasters, and maybe not of the scale of this thing that we've experienced in our living memory anyway. We know that about 80% of people will actually be fine.
Yeah.
And that 20%, some will do it really tough, and some will do it, a bit tough. So we are going to be okay. Most of us are going to be okay. And again, if we look to those people who we know are probably going to struggle more than us, we all do better.
Absolutely. There are some great questions coming through that we will get to shortly. But really, with this next poll, and I love this concept of everyone, having a chance to feel heard in these conversations. But clearly now these fears about, as you said, re-entry or returning to normal. There's a poll that's come up that asks the question, what's your biggest concern or fear about returning to normal, I guess, or to re-entry post-lockdown? And they things like going back into the workplace. We'll talk a little bit about that soon. Health and safety, as you mentioned, there's still lots of COVID in the community, and sometimes when we're talking about vaccination rate and opening up, it's easy to forget that there are still lots of people getting sick from the virus. So if everyone would like to just take a moment to cast your response, the thing that best describes your greatest fear about returning to normal. And whilst we're doing that, Georgie, perhaps you might have some advice to people who are feeling anxious about restrictions easing and kind of getting back out into the community.
Yeah, look, it's a real thing. Re-entry syndrome. It's a really well documented psychological phenomenon, and again, these feelings, which I'll describe in a minute, are very, very normal for these very unusual circumstances. So re-entry syndrome is a real thing, and it's been really well documented for people, for example, who've returned and reintegrated into normal life after really long Antarctic expeditions. So we've been working with Marie Riley, who's an Australian Antarctic Division psychologist who actually helps people to reintegrate. And life has been, in a sense, really simple. It has been stripped back to the bare basics. And then suddenly we're being overwhelmed. We're back in crowds, potentially. We're in noisy places. We're being bombarded with choices. And cognitively, that's really challenging to process. So FOMO might be replaced with FOGO, fear of going out. And the elation and anticipation is quite often followed by a crash from that high. Because things aren't really back to normal. There's still a lot of uncertainty, and this sense of we're having to make up for lost time and see everybody that we haven't seen for last lockdown here, 11 weeks, and we can't miss out on anything. Just again, take it easy on yourself. Talk about it. Your feelings will be very common and shared by many other people. And I think as a people leader, it's really important to remember that not everybody will be feeling the same, and that things are going to look a lot different. People are actually going to be changed. Some will be really desperate to get back into the workplaces. Some will be saying, there is no way I'm going back. Health anxiety about getting on public transport, the commute, hot desking, shared meeting spaces, and communication about not just your COVID safe plans, but actually having this conversation is really, really important, because we know that when people, even if you don't have all the answers, but you spark the conversation, the more transparent you can be about that, the more assured people will be around you. So yeah, it's a real thing. We're kind of making it up a little bit as we go. But I think it's really important to be having this conversation right now, and also, I'm just having a quick look at the poll thing. Readjusting. This is another massive shift, another big change, And we don't like change as humans. We like to know, we like predictability, we like to feel in control. And, it's really discombobulating when we again, things get ripped out and we're suddenly thrust into this new reality.
Absolutely. And you can see from the poll that I'm sure everyone can see that the concerns are varied. There are lots of people who are now quite, used to this rhythm, this new operating rhythm in terms of working from home and a more flexible, life, I guess. So we know that those things as leaders are going to be really important, to manage, and that empathy that we need to understand that everyone's situation is different. And of course, if anyone on this call hasn't already been sent or read an article about, this great resignation that is coming our way, that has already been experienced through the UK and the US, I do think that that it is something that we should be preparing for, because there will be a period where people are looking for change, perhaps to to kind of leave the pandemic behind and to get into some kind of new and fresh territory. But also we do expect that there will be this misalignment that might occur between really what employers and businesses want in relation to things like hybrid working and flexibility, almost a snapback in some cases, but a misalignment with what people want. And in many cases, people will say, well, it's just too important to me to be able to, continue with this concept of flexible working that's unlocked productivity and better balance in many cases. So it will be very interesting to see what happens through, kind of March and April in next year, where, we're certainly seeing lots of signs that this might occur. Just in terms of empathy, I'm going to start to get to some of the questions, but someone has asked a great question in terms of advice about how to deal with unempathetic leaders. And unfortunately, despite what we've experienced, we all know that there will be some. And this person said, such as the kind of suck it up types who can't or don't want to kind of hear another person's story. Do you have any advice for how to manage those leaders in the workplace?
Oh, look, we all know them, don't we? We've all experienced them. But I actually think they're becoming fewer. And I think in a way, you don't actually need to do anything. It's certainly not in the medium to longer term, because people will self-select, and those types of leaders will actually fail. And as you just referenced, Suzie, the talent war is going to become visceral. And those workplaces and those cultures and those leaders who actually hang on to those very outdated leadership styles are going to lose good people, and that will be noticed. In the immediate term, gosh, what can I say to you? I'm lost for words, because to be frank, it still shocks me, but I know it does happen. Look, I think there are a whole range. Hopefully you have got colleagues, you've got a good people and culture team, you've got someone else on the leadership team that you can actually go and talk to about this. Because again, I think if leaders across as a collective are not actually open to listening to the views of their teams and other individuals, quite frankly, they are going to fail, and they're going to be overtaken by a different style of leadership. But I think it's really important that, first of all, you look after yourself, you seek advice, you use the supports that hopefully your workplace provides you. You potentially, use a coach or a mentor. You call Beyond Blue and talk through maybe some strategies, because we can do that stuff as well. As we're not just here to help in a crisis, we're actually here to help people navigate the things that actually are affecting their well-being. And toxic workplaces, difficult leaders are absolutely contributing factors to those things. So I wish you luck. Play the long game. That person will not be around for a while.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's been a paradigm shift of what people want and almost demand from their leaders. And I hope, again, that, one of the things that this pandemic has driven is that those types of leaders will become absolute outliers. They'll become the exception, in organisations, hopefully. And as you said, the war for talent is already very, very hot in this country. And that's as a result of factors such as border closures and so forth, but also smart businesses are really holding on tight to their talent. They're listening. They are being, empathetic from a leadership perspective, and providing a really great and thriving place for people to work. Those that are in the other camp that have not perhaps learned or evolved as a result of the pandemic, our experience is they have already started feeling the effects of that, and that is people will vote with their feet, and they will make it a priority to go out and find an employer, find leaders that they can be inspired by, that they feel, heard from, and that shift will continue to occur. So whoever that person has asked that question, I hope that that situation changes for you, but I also am quite optimistic that we'll find less of those leaders in organisations. I just don't simply think that, that they can last and be effective into the future. We're going to talk a little bit about, mental health support and services, but there is a question that's been asked in relation to, I guess you do so much work with governments, and this question is specifically around the Victorian government. Just a question about how much concern in your experience did the government show towards mental health through the pandemic? And, what now, I guess, what are the upsides in terms of what the government is prioritising to help Victorians in particular, but all people recover from mental health?
Look, even pre-pandemic, the Victorian government had absolutely committed to significant, deep structural change of the mental health system. The Premier was on the record as saying this is a broken system and we can't just sit around and watch it fragment even more. So the Royal Commission here in Victoria reported last year, I think it was last year, again, that time thing, it's like, I think it was February, March last year. And basically that's made sweeping recommendations that will result in fundamental change to the mental health system and suicide prevention systems here in Victoria, because quite frankly, we actually don't have a system at the moment. It's this kind of complex, fragmented, sort of programmatic response that people fall through these massive gaps. And the government here in Victoria has accepted every single recommendation. And there is, excuse me, significant work already underway to not only set up new governance and structural structures in Victoria, but actually, excuse me, to invest in the response to the pandemic. So we're seeing pop-ups, mental health service pop-ups, which are actually a joint initiative of the Commonwealth and the Victorian government. I think there's been 10 set up already. And those are like one-stop shops in local communities which bring together multidisciplinary teams and basically are a really great gateway in. So those are, those were set up very rapidly last year and they're growing. We're seeing, at a national level, telehealth, mental health services actually delivered conveniently to people online on the phone, as opposed to having to go where a provider is located, which is often in the wealthier suburbs. We're seeing telehealth actually fundamentally change the way that mental health services are delivered. So look, to be frank, I would rather be living in Victoria if I lived with a mental illness than any other state in Australia right now, because we absolutely have a reform agenda that is, I think, really profound. It's going to take a long time to get right. It's very complex, but the government has committed over $3 billion in the last budget. And everything that we've observed is that they're incredibly serious about it.
Excellent. There's another question that's been asked that's had a number of thumbs up, so I will relay that one. And this one relates to, I guess, the issue that insurance companies effectively penalise those people who reach out for help for mental health issues. So income protection premiums and so forth increase, while those that kind of bottle things up and don't reach out for help are often not impacted in that way. The question is there any pressure being applied to insurance companies to stop this harmful approach?
Oh, I'm so glad this has come up. This is an area of advocacy that we've been really focused on for the last decade, and I've got to say, with limited success. There is still a lot more reform to do. But you're absolutely right. The way that insurance policies are designed actually are discriminatory. There's no other word for it. They discriminate against mental health conditions, and they treat mental health conditions completely differently to physical health conditions. They actually have blanket exclusions, especially on, the TPD and life insurance type policies, that actually deter people from early help seeking, which is the exact opposite of national policy on this. We want people to, as soon as they struggle, to go and get help as early as possible. If you sign when you apply for a policy and you tick a box to say, I've seen a counsellor, it could be it could be a relationship counsellor. It could be, which is a great, smart strategy, quite frankly, if you want to save your marriage. If I've been to a financial counsellor, it is so unnuanced. You will actually be excluded from certain cover. Now, that is not a modern way of thinking about this problem when 1 in 5 working Australians lives and works with a mental health condition. It's such an anathema to, what we know is right and true. So we've been advocating about this for years. For about 5 years, we sat around committee tables with the industry and got nowhere. So in the end, we said, we're not actually going to sit around the table with you anymore. We're actually going to work outside the tent. And we really started up the pressure. Look, we've had some success, especially with the travel industry. There was an amazing young Victorian woman called Ingram, who about 5 years ago now took on a major insurer. She had a first episode of depression when she was a teenager. She had to cancel a trip to New York, a school trip to New York. Qantas refunded her travel, no questions asked. Her travel insurance, she was not refunded. So she took them on and she won. And as a result of that, there have been major changes in policy design and conditions in travel insurance, but not so much in life insurance. This is a really important issue. Write to your MP, write to your insurer, ask these questions. We're continuing to sort of bubble away in the background, but quite frankly, the insurance industry needs to do it to itself.
Absolutely. There are some other fantastic questions coming through that really start to speak to, I guess, advice about managing mental health support in the workplace. And a really great question, which is advice for GMs and CEOs, people like you and I, who are obviously feeling a huge amount of responsibility for ensuring that the mental health of our people, remains a priority. But maybe I'll ask the question around what your advice is for business leaders and for organisations in terms of some of the things we need to be thinking about in providing mental health support. Another comment or question about the importance of things like mental health first aiders. But I kind of ask for your advice, and then we'll get into some of the specifics of questions people are looking for.
Look, this is one of my favourite topics. Won't surprise you, Suzie. Mentally healthy workplaces start at the top. If the CEO is not absolutely legitimate on this, is not talking openly about this, is not saying the mental health and well-being of the workforce is just as important as their physical health and safety, or their occupational health and safety, then don't even bother, quite frankly, because A, your people will see right through it, and B, you'll mess it up. So this has got to be a fundamental part of business strategy. It's not, you shouldn't other this, you should actually build it into your business strategy. Because if you don't, and if you're not doing this right now, because this is the number one issue, I can guarantee it, in the minds of your workforce. What are you going to do to help me protect my well-being? So be looking, and a lot of the things, yes, they are about services and sports, and I'll come to that in a minute, but it's actually really think good business, how to run a good business. It is work design, it's job design. Are your jobs designed so that they are achievable, that the duties are really clear, the person can see a line of sight between their role and the strategy of the organisation? So job design, incredibly good mental health strategy. Are you actually talking about this as a leader? Are you actually having open, candid conversations? Are you actually telling your own story? I talk constantly to my team when I'm struggling. I'm not having a good day. These are the things that, are really on my mind. These are the things I'm trying to do to get back on track. When you actually share your own struggles, you give permission for everybody else to disclose. That is really so powerful. And tell your own story. Don't, find your own words, because everybody's got a story, especially from the last 18 months. And then it's really, having those good policies and processes, absolutely tackling, stigma, discrimination, bullying, harassment, at its root, and doing that swiftly and judiciously and, with fairness. So all of these things, there are, we've got a great resource called headsup.org.au, which has got all of these kind of tips and strategies and tools and links and training resources, all free. So, that might be a good place to start. But then on the support side of things, yes, have an EAP, really important, but start thinking a little bit more laterally about this. Often the place where people turn to is their colleagues or their peers that they trust. And, having mental health champions that have undergone mental health first aid, fantastic training, really evidence-based. Anybody that's managing people, I would recommend, you really consider mental health first aid training. Or again, jump on that Heads Up website. There's really, really short, sharp online e-modules that we've developed that can actually be integrated into your learning management systems. You don't need to ask us permission, just do it. But also, I think the most important thing is culture. Like if you are talking about this stuff openly, and it's not just about having morning teas and asking, are you okay, and holding hands and humming, or funding gym memberships. None of that actually works. It does not make a difference. The things that make a difference are structural and cultural.
Absolutely. I would wholeheartedly agree. And I think a great kind of actionable insight, that we completed mental health first aid training, understanding, as you mentioned, that people who are struggling quite often turn to their peers. And it's a good thing, but it's also a scary place for people who don't necessarily know how to manage that, and a huge responsibility to ensure that you're responding the right way. So the person who asked, do you think that those mental health first aid qualifications will be more valued by workplaces? Well, I hope so. And I think there's an opportunity for everyone on this call to ask the question or to think about, completing that in your organisations. What about the added complexity of hybrid and remote work, where obviously we're not always in physical proximity to each other? What additional challenges do you think that's likely to create in terms of driving that kind of culture, but also supporting people who may be suffering from mental health pressures?
Yeah, it's a real thing, right? And it's something that we've all had to learn, I think, new leadership and people management skills over the last 18 months. If we haven't, we need to get them really quickly, because it does create a very different challenge. But the one silver lining to this is I think we have all got to know one another better. We've had different conversations. We've looked into one another's bedrooms and lounge rooms, and we've met their kids and seen the pets and perhaps even seen the naked partner walk past, So, we have, I think, certainly it's been my experience, become closer. We've become more human to each other. And when you see into someone's world, it gives you the opportunity to ask different questions and to notice changes. And, even if we're not physically together, looking out for those changes, looking out for changes in appearance, in body language, in the way people talk about work, the way people talk about themselves and their performance, the tone of emails, the speed at which they respond. Those can be signs that things aren't right. And again, I think just keep those closer connections going, have that regular contact at a team level, but also at an individual level. And, ask those hard questions, which can be very challenging. But, we need to ask the question. We need to kind of ask, listen, act. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a very good reason. We should use those in proportion. So always ask the question, hey, look, I'm having a really terrible day. I'm having a shocking week. How's things for you? I know that you've got a few things going on. I know you had a huge deadline last week. I know you've got, 3 kids under 10. How's it all going for you? And I think people are more receptive to those questions these days than they have been in previous times. Sorry, that's my text going off from my personal trainer.
Where were you this morning? Yeah,
the most important person in my life at the moment. Sure. So ask the question, and then hopefully that person will start to respond. And then you actually shut your mouth off and open your ears up. And the most important thing that we do in at that precious moment is to listen, and to listen without judgment, to listen with empathy, and to not try and fix the problem, which is, again, such an anathema often to our instincts as human beings, especially when we are managers or leaders. That act of just sitting with someone and saying, just tell me what's going on, listen, and then say, what can I do to help? Can't fix your problem, I can't fix the unfixable, but what can I do to help you? Is it just checking in with you every day? Is it should we call Beyond Blue together? Really simple strategies that actually just normalize the conversation and let that person know that you've seen them and that they're not alone, and you're not going to judge them, and you're here to support them to find their way back.
Fantastic advice. And I think really listening, as you said, often leads to second and third questions, which in some cases are more important than having an answer, because it definitely allows that person to feel heard, which I think is ultimately what they're yearning for. Just getting on to, I guess, services and actionable strategies that both individuals and workplaces can employ, to provide this type of support. That was a question that I weaved into, our planned conversation anyway. But what are some of the steps that businesses or people can reach out for help when they need it?
Well, look, I think so. We've got a dedicated coronavirus support service. That's a digital first sort of omni-channel type response, as you would expect. It's completely free. And I'd encourage people to just jump on the website to start with. We've had about, I think, 1.4 million engagements with that site since we set it up last April. And every fortnight or so, we change the content. We're constantly listening to our communities and the issues that people are presenting with and coming to us with, and we're changing the advice and adapting the advice and refreshing the advice to what we know are on people's minds. There is a massive section of really practical advice, referral pathways and tools for workplaces, both from the employer perspective but also the employee perspective. So I'd encourage you to jump on that site. That's coronavirus.beyondblue.org.au. And alongside that, there are a whole range of support options. Again, you can pick up the phone as a manager, as a colleague, if you're worried about it, a mate at work. You can call, obviously, on behalf of yourself, on behalf of your family. It's available to everybody. There is no problem too big or small. And we have counsellors who are specially trained in, the issues that people are experiencing. So it's a 1-800 number. Again, if you jump on that site, you can see the 1-800 number. It operates 24/7, really skilled, empathetic workforce, counselling, if that's what you need, but also just problem solving and advice. There's also, you can do that on the phone, you can do that online through web chat and have a live session. You can send an email if that's your preferred way of communicating, but also really great easy access to our online peer-to-peer forums, which has just gone ballistic. I think close to 3.3 million people have used that service in the last 18 months. And that's a safe online moderated space where people come together and share their problems, share their experiences, and support one another through it, offer hope, offer tips. Very safe, so clinically moderated. So if there's any kind of crisis, we can jump in and support people. But, it is incredibly valuable to people. We know it changes behaviour. We know as a result of even just one visit to those forums, people actually feel better. Their psychological distress reduces. But most importantly, it motivates them to act, to make a positive next step, whether that's to talk to a partner, talk to their boss, start exercising more, whatever it is. It leads to actually really positive behaviour change. So it's not an evidence-based service. And I think that's the way we need to think about mental health and what kinds of different supports people need. It is not just, one binary route to a psychologist or psychologist. There's a whole range of other choices and options and tools out there for people that we know are very safe, very efficacious, and actually work. So we've got to redesign the system around a whole bunch of other choices.
I mean, it's certainly interesting to think about some of the statistics that you've spoken about. You can be alarmed by the number of people who have clearly, had the need for the first time to reach out and talk about their mental health. But I guess you can flip that thinking and say, well, it's an unexpected upside, or it's potentially a positive that we can hold on to. That so many conversations are happening around mental health, and so many people are helping to, or kind of build the toolkit or build the bridge that you need in life to be able to manage your mental health proactively. So I guess, it's a good place to kind of almost finish this conversation. We've only got 5 minutes left, but do you think, what are some of the other unexpected upsides? I guess it seems counterintuitive to call them upsides from the pandemic in terms of the way that we live and I guess the kind of perspective we have around mental health.
Well, look, and if we start, with your business and, the kind of industry that you're at, there is a absolutely unique opportunity to reimagine how we work and our workplaces and our routines and rhythms and what productivity actually looks like. We have seen enormous capacity to accommodate change. The workforce has shown flexibility, resilience, adaptability. And these things are all really important building blocks for a mentally healthy workplace. So don't dismiss them, actually build upon them. We've got the foundations. Work with your teams, co-design solutions that are actually going to work for the business and for them. The best solutions are co-designed. If we impose things as, leaders who understand and get everything and are the smartest people in the room, we'll fail. My experience has been, if I give a problem to a team and say, how are you going to run hybrid meetings? How's that going to work for you? There'll be 20 different solutions, but the teams will work it out for themselves. So really that co-design and the constant pulse checking and sentiment checking, I think, is really important. I think it's also shown us that the power of work, the power of good work for our mental health. So again, if we can lift and create opportunities for people that lead to, a sense of a contributing life, especially for those people who are often, shut out of jobs or overlooked for jobs because they're different or, they've got certain challenges. Telehealth, I mentioned earlier, has been a game changer. But I think most important for me is this sense of community. I've been talking about self-care being our individual superpower, especially during lockdown. If we put that cloak on and we protect ourselves first, we can be there for others. But I think community is our collective superpower. It has forced us to think outside of our world, to think about others, to think about the decisions that we've made every single day to go and get tested, to go and get vaccinated. It's not just about us. It's actually about the whole community and protecting those, again, who are most vulnerable. And those simple acts of kindness, that social solidarity, the kind of spoonsvilles on my walks with the kids where they've got wooden spoons and they paint the face, just such a beautiful thing. And again, the last thing I want to say is, we talk about post-traumatic stress. There is a thing called post-traumatic growth, when actually we use this time to reevaluate what we really value, and we change our lives as much as we can to actually hang on to those things.
Absolutely. Well, Georgie, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out again. It is such an important topic, and I would say on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for your very brave work, and always very brave in sharing your own story. And I'm sure for many on the conversation today, there's some really important takeouts and hopefully some kind of actionable things, conversations you can be taking back to your workplaces. So thank you. We really appreciate you spending the morning with us. There have been so many questions, again, more questions than I think we've ever had before, and I really want to honour that by promising that in the post-comms we'll try to tackle as many of those topics and questions as we can. But thank you again, and hopefully the next couple of months brings you an opportunity to have some rest and recovery, which we know is important, but it's always a great pleasure. We're very proud of our partnership with Beyond Blue, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Thanks very much. See you.